Lowe's knows how to help you get the most out of your store run. That's why members save more with My Lowe's Rewards. Earn points towards My Lowe's money on eligible purchases. Get access to member-only deals and free member gifts. Plus, unlock free standard shipping when you reach Silver Key status. So what are you waiting for? Join for free today. Lowe's. We help. You save. Loyalty program subject to terms and conditions. Details at lowes.com/terms. Subject to change.
This episode is brought to you by Abercrombie. There's nothing better than the perfect jean and going out top combo, or an outfit that perfectly matches your plans. Abercrombie's relaxed jean goes with every occasion. Date nights with something lace, or daytime with a cozy sweater. And their barrel jean will surprise you. It's the trend that will become a staple in your wardrobe. Abercrombie denim comes in tons of rises, fits, and washes. Find your perfect pair online or in store.
I am Madison Timmons.
I'm Chris Soucy.
And we're paranormal specialists who live in the most haunted city on earth, Savannah, Georgia. Every day is Halloween in our line of work, so join us as we spin true tales of haunts, murders, and disturbing Savannah history. I'm Madison.
I'm Chris.
And welcome to the most haunted city on earth. Hello, and welcome back to another episode of The Most Haunted City on Earth. My name is Madison Timmons.
I'm Chris Soucy.
And today we have two guests sandwiched in between us.
Huzzah!
Huzzah! We have Corinna and Ray here with us. And we're very excited to talk about your trauma today.
You got troubles? We want to hear them.
Exactly. Yeah, we're super excited to talk about your house and the experiences that y'all went through. Chris and Eni had an amazing investigation, which I know y'all...
They were with us virtually.
Yeah.
They were there, and it was so handy to have people who had the experiences there to kind of... corroborate our experiences and say, oh yeah, that's the place where this happens, that's the place where that happens. So yeah, it was very handy. There was a lot. Yeah.
They missed you.
They literally said that, and I'm like, no.
They wanted Ray back bad, which I'm like, oh no.
It's like, you can't have him. Right. It's sorry, but. Yes, before we get into everything, though, we do have a few short announcements. As always, if you are looking to join us over on the dark side and get more exclusive content, live streams, we're currently live streaming for the Parajunkies. And also, if you want to be able to support us in the way of getting to our goal, which is going to be GHOST, the acronym GHOST, but also a vessel to take us to the ghosts, if you will. That is our plan for this year. We want to get a little, RV of sorts, if you will, and wrap it and take this RV to all sorts of haunted locations throughout the country so that we can bring our investigations to you more frequently. And another way you can support us is with JT's new creations. I'm going to hand him my microphone here for a second.
So just real quick, we got two Ouija boards here. I've been making Ouija boards. And here's the first one. Both of these are on sale at hauntedcitypodcast.com. They're up right now. So it's actually maple, all natural, 2 inches. And I made it. That's basically it. And then it comes with a maple planchette. And then this one is actually stained, a nice mahogany. And this is the first one that I made. This is also on sale at Haunted City Podcast. I'm going to be making more of them. These are special editions because this is the first one. This is the first one I made. And then this one, let me actually show you around back, is the special podcast edition. I burned the logo into the back. So, cool.
And why did you choose to leave that one natural?
Well, I wanted to leave it natural because I figured, I don't know if the stain does anything to it, like chemicals and stuff like that. So I was like, if you want one and you don't mind the stain being on it, then sure. But I wanted to leave it all natural because it is 100% of the earth.
So there you go. If you are feeling in the mood to conjure spirits on JT's accord, you can definitely do so now. As always, Chris and I are very weary of Ouija boards, so we recommend to use them as decor, but
proceed with caution.
Proceed with caution is the good thing to say.
Although these are very hefty, so if you want to make some ghosts.
Yes.
You can take to the streets of these. And just
yeah, JT wanted to make these thick boys, but the ones after this are going to be a little bit thinner, more of the classic style of Ouija board, but these were supposed to be...
Well, when he was first working on it, I was like, oh, that's cool. It's a chopping board that's also a Ouija board.
You could absolutely use it for both of those.
But that would not do... Although you could flip it over. Flip it over, cut your vegetables,
and then conjure,
and then talk to the spirit of the cow you just chopped up.
But yes, alrighty, y'all. So let's go ahead and dive into your encounters. So let's, I guess, start out with, how did y'all get into this house? Was it just,
It was kind of coincidence. We were living in an apartment that we had been in since we moved to Savannah for 3 years, and a friend of mine, they were moving at the same time our lease was ending, and I was like, we could both get a regular house, or we could all move in together and get this pimp ass house that would be like huge.
Right.
And they were like, okay, so we got this 4 or 5 bedroom, like 3,000 square foot home. It was set up perfect because the one side, there was a pocket door. They could actually go have their privacy. We had our side for privacy. There was an upstairs. So it was set up perfect to have 2 couples as roommates. And so everybody was like, yeah, and it would wound up being cheaper than if we both rented individual homes or apartments.
Yep, and this was January 2019.
Okay.
Yeah, but things started right off.
Yeah, it seemed to be the perfect fit until we were moving in.
It liked me a lot.
It did.
Yeah.
So,
well, oftentimes when you have experiences like this, the early encounters are kind of the the sugar. It's like we draw them in, make sure that they feel comfortable. Before things get dark, there's a lot of massaging and nice times and usually it's not like you show up and it's like rah!
Yeah.
It's usually like testing the waters, as it were.
Yeah, I think it was trying to test the waters, but I'll say my mom, my bestie, her niece, my little sister, they're both like 22 now, but then they were like 16. And me, yeah, they were youngins, but we were all moving and getting everything in. We're all sitting in the living room, dog tired. Front door just swings open, and of course I get up and I'm like, nope, not today.
So this isn't our first experience.
So I get up, walk to the door, and I'm like, you're not welcome here in the name of Jesus. Get out. We're not doing this. You're not welcome here. Get out of my house. And I slammed the door, and I turned around and looked at everybody, and they're like,
what just happened?
What just happened? And I'm like, do not speak of this. And we kept on. I said, keep it moving. And so... Yeah, I told him about it when we went to the store later that night because I wasn't going to talk about it at the house.
Exactly.
But yeah, that was the first experience.
While we're literally moving in.
They're like, welcome.
Yeah. I never
just want you to know we're here.
Yeah.
This is how it's going to play.
Yeah.
And then they were like, wow, she's really aggressive. So,
well, it's important to set boundaries.
I stand my ground.
you absolutely have to set boundaries with spirits.
Exactly. Oh my God.
And in time, you tend to learn the limits or the strengths of spirits by setting boundaries.
Right.
Because some spirits cannot adhere to the boundaries you set because of the nature of their occupation.
Right.
The reason they're there may not be conducive to what you want from them.
Well, I think that's the reason why I like watching me through the doorways and
Sure.
stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Because
Right.
it knew.
Right.
Don't mess with her.
Exactly. So you said that you have had experiences before this. What were they similar in a way, or were they?
No, like it was completely different. I mean, definitely not gonna say either one of us are psychic or like mediums or anything, but I do think we're both sensitive to some level. And when me and her first started dating, and I was actually living with her best friend, so it was kind of the same situation where we were dating. My roommate was her best friend, so we were always there. And so I was in my bedroom, and she was not very familiar with paranormal or supernatural, which
I was really scared of everything then because I felt it, but I didn't know.
Understood.
That's
Yeah.
reasonable. Perfectly
Yeah.
reasonable.
And mom always told me, well, it's just Jesus following you, so you're fine. So
and I grew up, it's normal. So
Yeah.
it's just normal. And so I'm living with her best friend, so we're laying in bed, and I'm looking at the door, and she's looking at me, and a little boy just walks through the door, and he kind of looks at me, and we kind of make eye contact, and like it's like he realizes I saw him, and then he just kind of disappeared, and then we had little things happen, and sometimes I'll get like, it's like a story somebody's told me. That's kind of how I pick up on the situation or whatever. So I just kind of told her, I'm like, this is his name. This is what happened. This is why he's here. Shortly after we got married and moved into our own place, and he followed us. Like, we knew because he would tap on the kitchen counters, like on the doors. And so right before we got married, her parents were getting divorced, and so it's a great time. And her mom and dad were at our house, and they started arguing, and he was very protective of her. The spirit was very protective of her. So literally our kitchen cabinet door starts slamming while her parents are in the living room arguing, and they were like, what is going on? Like, we've got to go. So at that point, she was more, I guess, familiar
yeah.
or accepting of things that were happening. So it's like I
But
said,
everywhere we've lived, he's
followed
us. And if I hear knocks on the cabinet, I know. Everywhere we've lived, there's always been knocking on the cabinets in the kitchen.
And so I actually did.
I know
reach
it's
out
Elijah. I know it's Elijah.
And I did reach out to a medium, and they came over, and everything that I told her I was feeling is exactly what they said he was portraying to them. That how he lost his family, and that's why he attached to us, because he saw us as family parent.
He's our sweet little ghost baby.
Yeah.
That's so sweet. I love that.
So, like I said, we're familiar, and when we moved into this house, like I said, we would hear the tapping on the cabinet sometimes. It wasn't as much, but we knew he was there too, but we also knew there was other things there as well. So
Sure.
so yeah, we're both kind of familiar. Like, it wasn't new to us, and I think that's why we were not scared. Oh, I wasn't scared.
Here's a question. Has Elijah followed you to where you are now?
Yes.
I think so, yeah.
Okay, good. Because
He
during
came
our
with us.
investigation, we definitely encountered what we felt was a child. And that child was very much I'm trapped here. Like, I shouldn't be here. I'm not supposed to be here, and I can't get out. Because there was like a weird dynamic happening in the house. And there was one that was very childish and childlike. And we were like, it sounds like there's a child here.
I don't
and
think
it
that
seems
was really
like
a child.
Well, we were able to figure and piece together pieces like that, but because there was an argument going on. There was a child who was like, I need to get out of here. I'm not supposed to be here. and then there was something else that was imitating and being like.
There's a very imitating.
Yeah, mimicking.
Mimicky.
But it was just one of those things where in our conversation, it's like, does it feel like we're talking to a child right now? It's like, yeah, it does. But there was a more crowded voice. So like when Enid was doing the Estes,
Right.
she heard this man voice and this like other like trying to piece through and try to explain things to us, but it kept getting forced out.
Right.
I mean, I've heard knocking on the cabinets.
Good.
At the new place, I don't think
I'm just
it's- I don't
like
think
checking
it's
because I was like,
Elijah.
I hope he's not stuck there.
Because if not, we
for
might have
some
to go get him.
reason.
No.
Well, and that was just it. It was interesting,
Right.
Because we found ourselves kind of like chasing in circles spirits that seemed to be very residential, but there seemed to be a transient in there somewhere, a figure that kept suggesting it could leave or wanted to leave or wanted to get out.
Right.
But there was definitely something that was like, I know everything about this house, and I'm going to tell you everything about this house, and I've got all the facts because we kept getting like, journal and long table and switch and all these things every time we went into a different room.
Yeah,
right.
every time you went, I was like, and it even said my little sister's name, and I was like, what's my sister's name?
What's that, Eni?
Yeah,
Which not a normal name, and it even said Enoch. But I think it was on its way to saying Enica.
Yeah.
But it said Enoch, and I was like, do you think it was trying to say Enica? Mm-hmm. Also, always bad when they know your name. Right. It's never good. That's never a good sign.
Yeah. Well, the funny thing is, it actually used my sister's first name, and we don't call her that.
See, that's the kind of detail that comes down to like. It's odd.
She goes by her
when it
middle
starts
name.
using names because it's trying to fake a familiarity and a comfort level by calling you by name.
Well, that's unnerving for sure. So, I think one of my questions I wanted to ask before we really dive into it, do you think that you noticed any kind of difference between, like with Elijah while you were in that house? Did he have any kind of reaction?
I don't think he was as active.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think he was a little more muted, like more of watching from the sideline, kind of more, like I said, he was always protective of her. So
Right.
I think there was kind of that wall.
Okay, that's super interesting. Yeah, because it seems like there's a lot of energy going on in this house, so it makes sense that
Very powerful. Whatever. There's something there that's very, very powerful and very ominous, very negative, and it can consume you if you let it.
Oh, sure.
It can very much consume you. I was there a lot by myself because I was teaching from home, and everybody else worked out of the house. And so, when you finish teaching from home, you're still tired. You don't want to go anywhere. So you're there like 24/7 during the week, and it looked bad.
Yeah, I can honestly say that even in the evening that I spent there, all three of us felt very drained. We felt like we were definitely losing energy and losing strength throughout the evening. And in fact, when we were doing a spirit box section in the upstairs over the garage room, which I was lying on my back. I had to lie down flat because I just couldn't stay upright.
Yeah.
And so we were doing the session, but I was lying on the ground.
Well, even when you and Eni were both talking about having the headache behind your
Right.
eye, like our roommate, she was just like, oh my God. She was like, I haven't had that headache since we moved.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, and I really hadn't had a headache since we've moved either.
Yeah.
Because I literally went and got put on medicine for migraines.
Yeah, it was
It was
definitely
that
migraine.
bad.
It was that pre-migraine sensation.
Yeah, and so
like
they
something
put me-
pressing against the back of your
Yep.
eye, and you're like, oh.
and it
that's
still
weird.
was not working.
So, what was, besides the door experience, what was the first indicator that there's something that you're really going to have to get accustomed to in the house paranormally?
So the woman that we could hear talking on the other side of the house, like on the side where her office was, it's at first you're like, did somebody leave the TV on, and then you're like, is it somebody outside?
Yeah,
And
it's
then it would get more aggressive.
But you can't understand what she's saying.
It's words,
like,
but
is
you
somebody
can't.
talking? Like, is somebody outside?
Yeah,
Right.
we actually had that experience a few times. The night that we were there, we actually heard a woman's voice. It sounded like a TV, and then in the next room over, or somebody like standing right in front of the house. And at one point, we heard it very clearly, and it sounded like it came out of the hallway that led to the stairs. So we all like rushed over there because like whatever it was almost like somebody was standing in the garage saying something. And we were just like, okay. And then oddly enough, because it was late at night, someone was pulling out of the driveway across the street. And we are kind of like, maybe we heard that person, but it really did have that like echoey quality of being in an empty room right next door, right? Like connective.
Yeah, no, it would do that. Like, I would be working in the office and I would be there by myself. And our roommate, she would always clear her throat. She had a lot of sinus issues. And so I would be sitting there and I'd hear her go, Needless to say, this is lunchtime on a weekday and she's at work. Right. Everybody's at work. Sure. I'd stop and I'd look around and I'd be like, and I would just say out loud, I'd be like, not falling for it. Like, I'm not, no.
Right.
We're not doing this. Like, could you please stop? Like, it like to mimic people. I would hear him cough. Just small things. Yeah. Like that. I would like to do that when it was completely silent if I was working. So I would always, like, usually try to keep a TV on or sure. something just so I could kind of drown out the noise.
And then there was when her younger sister was down visiting.
Oh, when y'all went out?
No, when you called me at work because y'all heard her screaming in the living room.
No, that's because y'all went out.
Oh, was it? We went out?
Yeah, okay, so Ray and a couple of friends had went out. I didn't want to go. Hannah was young. She couldn't go in anyway. So I said, we'll stay here and have a girls' night, do our nails, whatever. So we're sitting on our bed in the master bedroom. And we're doing our nails, having fun, talking. And we hear the woman. But except she's loud. But you can't understand what she's saying. And I'm like, well, that's odd. She's usually not that loud. And then she starts screaming, like to the point that I'm like, get up. I told Hannah, I said, shut the door, get what you need. And, I said, you stay in here. I said, and she calls him Ray Ray. I said, get Ray Ray on the phone. I said, because I think somebody's in the house. I was like, because there's no way.
Right. It can't be the
stairs. There's no way. Loud, right. So I call him and I'm like, so I think somebody might be in the house. And he's like, well, go check. And so I'm like, okay. So I open the door and Hannah's like, don't go. So I go check. There is nothing. I go into the hallway and I'm like, okay, I'm not walking down this hallway. But the vent in the hallway, it always like to shake it.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
And I think it got y'all with that.
It did. Did it? Yeah. Well, actually, while we were in that hallway, we had a spirit chat going. And the spirit chat was like, look up.
Yeah.
Above you. Look up. We're like,
there's nothing
I'm
there
but
a vent.
There's a vent. There was a vent right there. Yeah.
It's a jerk. I'm telling you, it's a jerk. So, yeah, the vent started shaking, and I was like, I know exactly what this is. And she was all freaked out. Sure. And I'm like, come on, let's just shut and lock the door until Ray Ray gets here. So we'll stay in the bedroom. I was like, let's turn the TV up, put on some music, and finish doing our nails. But yeah, that was a really aggressive moment. And then his response to that.
You got to match energy. So if you come at us aggressive, we're coming back aggressive. So I come home and I'm just like, got my salt, let's go. So I'm salting the corners and like, Corinna's like, you just salt. I'm like, no, we're salting the four corners on every room. So we're going through and I'm salting everything. And then I go in the stairwell to go upstairs and I walk up the front and I'm just and I've got a handful of salt and I get to the landing and I look up and there's this just big dark figure standing there. And as I look up, it like bows and like those like wings. And so I'm just standing there with a handful of salt. So I throw it and then it just kind of vanishes and use some choice words, but I'm like, you're messing with the wrong ones. So, and then I'm going through, and then I'm, saging and doing the whole thing. And it did calm it down a little bit after that. But
we pretty much made a vow not to let's not talk about it.
Sure.
Let's not say anything.
That's one of the most interesting traits of certainly Southern rural spirit management. If you hear it, no, you didn't. If you saw it, no, you didn't. And what people don't understand is what you're doing is you're depriving it the attention that it is negotiating with, because its presence gets stronger every time you pay attention. Every time you're giving it focus, it's taking it and turning it into energy. Yep. And so when people say, if you heard something, no, you didn't, to the logical mind, it's like, well, what are you saying? It's like you have to ignore it in order to starve it. And I also think that you might have been squeezing the toothpaste of the house to that room, because if you were salting the house, all the energy was probably looking for a place to get to, and it feels like you may have like cornered it in a way so that it finally was manifesting, that you could see it.
Right. And and I told Eni too. I was like, because there was that AC return there, and then the one in the hallway, and I was like, I felt like when I would sage the house, like it was hiding in that.
Oh, sure, of course.
Ductwork.
Yeah. Right.
Because it never stopped, but like I said, we never gave it the attention that it was craving.
Then it just like the stare around the corner.
Yeah, and that would happen.
I mean, literally, I would lay in bed.
This episode is brought to you by Indeed. When your computer breaks, you don't wait for it to magically start working again. You fix the problem. So why wait to hire the people your company desperately needs? Use Indeed's sponsored jobs to hire top talent fast. And even better, you only pay for results. There's no need to wait. Speed up your hiring with a $75 sponsored job credit at Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply.
Welcome to the White Lotus in Thailand.
It's a wellness center.
You should get a facial. The lady in the airport thought you were my dad.
Oh my God.
The Emmy Award-winning HBO original series returns.
There has been more crime on the island.
I'm a little freaked out. What happens in Thailand stays in Thailand.
Oh, what does that mean?
It means we're not dead yet.
Amen.
Amen.
A new season of the HBO original series The White Lotus premieres February 16th at 9 p.m. on Max.
We actually talk a lot on this podcast about a phenomenon called Hatman, the Hatman phenomenon, which seems to be a spirit that hangs out in thresholds.
Yeah.
Outside of windows or outside of thresholds, kind of just staring through, watching, doing a watcher situation. Yeah. But whenever you have a spirit that hides at the threshold, you're dealing with something that is sort of energizing. It's using a sort of a voyeuristic, parasitic ability to mimic life by watching it and soaking in the patterns, the habits, the sounds, the voices, the things like that. Because it's trying to reconstruct a living being out of the bits and pieces that it's stealing from you. Right?
Right. And it wasn't just our bedroom where it would happen. It would be like any doorway from the hallway. If you're sitting in the living room, you'd look up and you could see it looking around the corner.
Yeah, I'd be in my office and I could feel it standing in the doorway, like watching me, because my chair would.
I think we had a couple of experiences that night, especially in that long hall. The long hall, when you're looking down the long hall, you're feeling like the door, this is this, and the one at the end is like, and you're like, it feels like astigmatism. It feels like what I'm looking at is the door frame, and my eyes are making the shadows warp. Yes. So it's literally like half a face right there.
That's exactly.
But it's just absolutely darkness, and you're like,
that's exactly
I could explain it away.
Yep.
I could explain it away by saying my vision's not good enough to make out the light and dark down there, and so it's just mushing it. But you get that sincere sensation that it's just somebody just like.
Well, I felt like it loved that room on the left. When you go down the hallway, that room on the left, like it loved that.
That was
room.
the one that kind of like always gave us like trying to get into the bedroom at the end of the hall, you kind of like rushed past.
Oh yeah,
that room. You're like, all right.
It's like nobody. Our roommates. That was their end of the hallway down there. But like any of us or anybody that visited us or anything, nobody wanted to go down there.
It was an unnatural hallway.
You know,
there's something like long and narrow about it, and it was like, this is straight out of a horror movie. Yeah. It's the kind of thing where you're walking down and you're like, am I not at the end of the hall yet? This should be the end of the hall.
Exactly. It's like something's going to reach out and get me.
Right. And when y'all were doing the live stream, I was just like, this hall is so much creepier now that it's on, like, somebody else is there.
Right.
No, this is me the whole time y'all were doing the live stream. I'm like, yes. Yes. And he's like, what? And I'm like,
vindication.
I'm so validated.
Yes.
So did you see the entity that peeked around the corners the same way that Ray did, or did you see it as something else?
I just seen just a shadow. I couldn't tell if it was a man or a woman. I just felt that it had a very negative energy and that it wanted me to give it attention, and it would get mad because I would not give it attention.
If you ignore it, it'll
I ignored it
sure.
to the end, and I made very clear boundaries that whenever you do not come in our bedroom and you do not come in my office space, and I did not sit in the living room freely. I did not, I was either in the bedroom.
So the open areas were too hard to maintain spiritually.
It was too hard.
Right?
It was too hard.
Energy-wise. Yeah,
but not only that, too, we had roommates. So it's kind of also like we can't maintain everything because there's more than there's more people living there. We can maintain and take domain over our area.
Sure.
Because she actually had a Bible that stayed open as soon as you walked in our bedroom.
Each doorway to get to our spaces.
Her crystals were there so that, everything was just...
That's a really interesting thing, too, to consider is conceptually this house was built as a family home, and to have two familial units that are not related to each other within it does kind of create a vacuum of energy. It creates this, there is a gulf between these two familial units, and that could be something that would embolden a spirit to see, because in a lot of it, and when you hear about house possessions or house hauntings, one of the things that oftentimes happens is the separation of family. Like it picks on one person, and then their emotions and their attitudes create isolation, and it is that isolation that they really
happened.
I was like, it's that isolation that spirits really crave.
It loved Antonia. It loved me. It loved me. And the more I would not give it attention, the more it was like, I'm gonna get you.
Mm-hmm.
Because it would create a rift between Corinna and one of the roommates, me and one of the roommates. So never us and never them, but us against them.
Right. It's an easier get. That's why oftentimes children are so easily preyed upon, because their logic doesn't always allow for it, so they can separate the child from the family, and that gap is where a lot of paranormal and supernatural energy exists. When you have humans pulling apart, there's all this tension, all that energy.
Yeah.
And so it's interesting that because I never really thought about if you had adult roommates in a house that had a kind of that parasitic brand of spirit, you could see where it would really capitalize on, you know what, they're not bonded closely. I could drive a wedge between them.
Definitely, yeah.
And if I'm in the wedge, then I get all the tension, and I get not the attention but the tension. So I'm fascinated because the house was significantly present. It had this to the point at which it was one of those things where it's like, if I had to venture guess, I don't have mediumship or psychic abilities, but if I were to hazard a guess, I would say that this is the type of entity that you usually find with unmarked graves. Somebody's buried under this house, or because whatever it is has a total ownership sensation, a total, and the fact that there are other spirits just suggests that the energy is strong enough to draw spirits in and to draw things in.
Right.
Because there's something in your yard, in that backyard, that I was like, there you get the sensation standing in the yard that you're like, yeah, I could see where maybe someone was unceremoniously buried, or maybe somebody, maybe a slave, when this was a rice plantation, was unceremoniously buried here.
Oh, that's what I told Ray. I was like, and I probably told him this a couple of years ago. I was like, there's graves under this house. And he was like, how do you know? And I was like, I just feel it. There's graves underneath this house.
Right. When you
I was like, there's too much going on here.
When you try to categorize
Yeah.
hauntings, you're like, you can tell hauntings that seem to have attached to a person and brought them in.
Right.
Because there's usually a hallmark communication, something that almost immediately becomes tangible for that connection. But if you come into a place and it is, present because of the place, and it's like, well, it's not me.
Right.
It's the place. It's the building.
And that's one of the things that we talked about too. I don't think it's necessarily the house.
No.
It's the land.
It's the land.
And the house just happens to be where it's...
Yeah.
Right.
I don't know if I had told you, but when I first moved to Savannah in the early 90s, I had a friend who was a hoodoo practitioner, and he told me that there was a plat eye out on 17, because Berwick didn't exist. Out on 17, there was a plantation out there, and and the plantation owner made himself a plat eye, which you can do by burying somebody without ceremony. But if you do it over like a let's say a box of treasure, like you fill it with your valuables, and then you put the body over it and you bury it, the plat eye will protect the treasure. You can actually make the plat eye a guard, and it becomes a guard of the area. The entire area becomes its precinct, its jurisdiction, as it were. And I was like, that's so interesting, because one of the things about a plat eye is it can mimic. It does mimic. It tries to look like or sound like or do things to do this. So like in the very first, when Eni talked to me, I was like, I used to go in the woods, when there were woods over there, looking for the plat eye, because they were like, at that time, the only sightings of plat eyes were usually the big black dog. So you go looking for the big black dog. But in the years since then, I've heard all kinds of stories where the plat eye can assume your husband or your wife's shape, or can do all these other things.
And that's what happened.
Well, and then you start to look at the broader scope of folklore and superstition. Every culture has them. Every culture has a shapeshifter. Every culture has this belief that there's an ominous spirit that can assume the form, the sound, the likeness of anybody. And that becomes like this interesting, well, if every culture agrees that there's some kind of spirit out there that mimics, there's some doppelganger energy out there, then it's probably a good indication that there's something out there.
Right.
And that, honestly, that's happened too. Like, I would be laying in bed and I'd be scrolling on my phone, and and I'd see Corinna walk in, and I'd see her walk to her side of the bed, and I'm not looking up, but you can feel her standing there still, and all of a sudden she'll walk in, and then I'd look over, and we've been married for 25 years, and she was like, "What did you see?" And I'm like,
I know the look.
Yeah, of course.
I'm like, nothing.
I'm like, liar.
But
if you saw it, you didn't.
Exactly. But the same thing happened to her. She'd see me, I'd walk in, and she'd see me walk,
You walk in the master bedroom and walk to the bathroom, and I'd be like, he'd walk in a couple seconds later, and I'm like, he'd be like, "What happened?" I'd be like, "You just went in the bathroom."
So, mimic, very likely, very possible, but also time slips. The sudden and unexplainable witnessing of a different time, of a period and point in time, either past or future. You just happen to maybe that house has some sheer dimensional fractures in it.
There's something there, because I was sitting on the back porch, and it had rained a little bit earlier, and I've never heard of this from anywhere, But I'm sitting on the back porch and I'm scrolling on my phone and I look up and right where y'all were standing, where that little brick pad was.
Yeah.
And I'm like, why is that blurry? Like, is this my glasses? Like, it's the screen wet? And I get up and I walk outside and I'm like, no, this is still blurry. Like, this, am I having a stroke? Like, what's going on here?
Right.
And so I called Corinna and I was like, hey, come here. And so she's just like, what? I'm like,
I despise going in that backyard.
Oh, sure.
and she looks over there. I'm like, look over there. And she's like, what is it? And she's like, why is that blurry? And I'm like, I don't know. And
So, and I was curious about this too. When you say it's blurry, would you say that there was a focal blurriness, or was it the entire thing blurry? Like, was there a circle or an area that was specifically blurry?
Area.
It was like just an area that was blurry when you look that side of the yard.
So, if you'd like to hear, I have heard of this before.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah,
So,
because we've been like, what?
People who have experienced time slips. Oftentimes, right before or right after they have done this. So, like, there's a famous street in England that people would walk down, and then all of a sudden they look around and they're covered in old-timey costuming and old-timey vehicles, and they don't understand it, and they'll turn around, and what they see is where they had just walked is just a blurry, they almost describe it like water.
Yeah, it was it was ripply.
Like Ripley, yeah,
Yeah.
and they go back through it, and they're back at their own time.
Oh, well, we didn't walk in it.
Yeah, no. I've never heard of anyone looking at it, regularly and walking into it, but people who are panicked about where they are and they see this mass of, like,
Right.
that's not like everything
Then
else,
they see it.
and they see it as an exit. But I have heard stories of people encountering this a lot of times in, like, jungles. They'll come across this and it'd be like, so. I guess what it boils down to is I've heard it mentioned that portals are blurry.
That's what I was
that's
thinking.
kind of
Well, that's
what I
what he
thought
was
it
like. He
was.
was
I'm
like, "Is that
that's
a portal?" And I'm like,
Right.
"I don't know, but I'm going back inside."
Yeah.
Right, because people get into their
Don't
mind
care-
that it's like a
don't
fiery
care, no.
circle, or
Yeah.
that there's
No,
something
it was
very
just
clear,
like very
and it's
ripply,
very
blurry,
muted.
and muted, like.
And if you're not paying attention, you wouldn't know.
Well, we were
Like, if you were
is
looking
it?
down, or if you weren't paying attention, you were just walking.
Yeah.
You wouldn't notice it.
Because you're like,
but-
is my vision just going bad?
Right.
Or
But the fact that
Yeah.
you know where it is a
Yeah.
big part of it. It's like if it's got a location, and you could say, okay, I see this area here that's bit.
Yeah.
I think
And it
you're
lasted
looking right
for
at
like
that.
a week.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
really disturbing.
And I did not go back in the backyard.
Yeah, no, nor should
And
you.
you couldn't see it. You couldn't see it during the daytime. Like,
So the reason why it's so upsetting is the amount of energy supposed for that to exist is a cataclysmic amount of energy. So it doesn't stay. It only happens in small. The fear is you go through it and then you have to wait, 50 years for it to come back,
Right.
because
Yeah.
the exertion of energy to create a portal is so great,
Right.
that it doesn't really stay unless there's some kind of very potent work
Yeah.
going on in the land. Somebody had something even more diabolical altar or something that was designed to create and maintain a portal. So
Right.
that's interesting. I'm very interested now.
Yeah.
yeah, but
Which
like I
might
said,
explain the transientness of the.
Right.
The
Because some of the
entities that are
spirits did not
there.
seem connected. It was like
It's like they're just passing.
because
through.
we at some point we kept getting like 6, and they were like, maybe we're talking to a 6-year-old, because we would ask, how many are there, how many, and I think it got up to 30, and then went down to 10, and it was going on every time we would ask this question. I was like, is it possible that we're dealing with like a throughway? It's just
Right.
like
Yeah,
spirits
'cause-
moving through.
Because that's what he's always said. He's always like, I feel like they're just passing through,
Which then means there's probably a gatekeeper.
That's what I was thinking too. I'm
which
like,
is probably the
which is probably
probably
the man that would stand outside of
Exactly.
our door and look at us. at
the
night.
one that the French doors that were at the back of the master bedroom.
Yes.
Sometimes we just leave the curtain open because we'd like to wake up with the sun coming up.
I mean, it was a beautiful backyard.
Beautiful
Yeah, sure.
backyard, so we just leave the curtain open.
But
'cause
full
it's-
of peril.
Yeah,
right.
privacy's fenced backyard and everything. So, 2, 3, 4 o'clock in the morning, sometimes I'd wake up and there'd be somebody just standing there watching me through the window. Like, just a minute. Like, I could tell it was a man, but I couldn't tell any features. But, I could tell the shape, and, like, I'd just get up and shut the curtain. I'd be like, okay, well, that's not going to happen. But, I'd be like, it would, and after we moved out, he told me that it happened to him, too.
Wow.
It's that whole denying. Like, nothing's happening.
What works, works.
Just make me think I'm crazy.
Fair enough. I mean, well, and it's interesting to hear that it seems like there is a portal in the backyard, being that you're so close to a plantation, because, there's a possibility, because of the nature of how plantations operated, really heinous things might have happened in that area.
Oh, absolutely.
Or
absolutely.
there might be some type of mass grave on the property or near the property, because that would be enough. That amount of torment or what have you would be enough to open a portal.
Exactly. And I could only imagine the amount of torment that happened.
Right.
Well, yeah, because that area, like on 17, you're on the north side. Is that right? I'm now like, which way is 17 facing? It's going south. So you were on the west side. Because on the east side, on the other side, was another plantation, which was notoriously cruel. And so it's like, oh, this whole area is just a nightmare fuel factory.
Right.
And I did find, the only thing I could ever find is I did found this one little snippet article, and I don't even know if it was credible, but talking about how Berwick Plantation and the plantation across the way did work together.
Yes. Actually, it's funny because when they were building the development that became the Berwick Plantation, they found graves. Like right there when they were building the, the Wolf Lake Lodge, whatever it is.
Oh, okay.
There.
Yeah, down
so
the other
in that
end.
general area, while they're clearing it away, they found graves, and it was like, oh, that's interesting because what else was here, and for how large a property it was, there could have been fringe elements of slave quarters and people living on the 4 people on the ground and things like that. It's like, this is a very potent recipe for haunting, and I'm just really, and it's funny because when Eni was like, because we like got the message like that afternoon or that morning. It was like, hey, you want to go look at a haunted house? I was like, do we?
Well, and that's what I was telling about earlier. It's just like, we were there for 5 years, but we completely ignored it, and then like, once we had our stuff out, I called Eni. I was like, hey, do you want to check this out?
We're going to turn the keys in real quick.
Turn the keys in, and 2, we will not be participating. Like, we're down for a ghost hunt.
So bizarrely, you were a big part of the investigation because you were brought up a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was definitely asking a lot. And it was asking for Ray a lot, which I think is indicative of its game plan. It's like, okay, I see what you're doing. There's definitely a sleight of hand here of kind of like weighing this emotional attachment to you, which is also why I was like, gosh, I hope that's not Elijah, because that would have been sad.
Yeah.
Because
Right.
So
forget you, Elijah.
Megan was saying that you left because of the ghosts, and when she would say that, it made the ghosts really mad. And I would say that's not true. Sometimes people have to move. That's just how it works. Don't say that because we don't understand their relationship. But there was this upset ghost who was like, what did we do? How do we get him back? What did I do wrong?
Right.
And you're like, well, for first thing, stop communicating. That's weird. Dead people should not communicate. They should just
being creepy, bro.
Be where you're supposed to be.
But yeah, it did raise all these interesting questions of what was, because apparently they had invested a lot in you. 5 years is a long time to be in a place and trying to reestablish that kind of rapport, or get the straw back into the Capri Sun package that you are.
Right.
is one of those things where it's like, we just had them right where we wanted them.
It's like, oh man,
we're gonna start over from square one. But it definitely seemed like there was an entity there that professed its inability to leave. And it was like, that seems to be an aggressive spirit, and it seems to be a possessive spirit.
Yep.
It wants what it wants. It doesn't want the house to be empty. It does not want it to be empty for any period of time. So
right.
It probably ceases to function if it doesn't have somebody there to annoy or scare or whatever it be.
And honestly, I think we were probably one of the longest term renters that property
I'm sure.
had.
Yeah.
Because
well, if anyone else was having these sensations, they might not even recognize it as paranormal. They'd just be like, I'm comfortable in this stuff. This house
this is weird.
This isn't homey to me.
Right. Yeah, because even the house, even with the lights on, it's dark.
It's dark. Yeah, we turned on every light, and we're like,
why is
that's
it
all
so
you
dark?
got?
Yeah. Yes.
I mean, honestly,
our new place, we turned the lights on. We were like, oh god,
like, no,
Blinded.
I can see.
And also, just because some people were mentioning it, if you want to watch the live stream, the full live stream of this investigation, you can find that on Patreon, because Eni went live and we shared it over with our para-junkies. So put a pin in that just to say, if you want to know everything that we're referring to, you can go watch that. My other thing, though, that I wanted to mention was, did you have a moment where you were almost having a breaking point with these spirits, or it felt like it was getting too overwhelming at all?
I felt that I'm very sensitive to the energies around me. So, like, if I'm around a lot of negative energy, it affects me mentally negatively.
Sure.
Same thing with positive energy. And it mentally, it wore down on me. Like, it'll cause panic attacks and things like that.
Short answer, yes.
Yeah.
And then I would go through, and like I said, which, I mean, honestly, I don't know if that was why it kept bringing me up, but I was kind of I don't want to say authoritative figure, but I was the one that would always put it back in check. I was the one that would go through and sage and salt and...
Yeah, me, I just fussed.
Yeah, she chilled.
Well, that's a good point, is like, if you were basically the police and you left, there is possible that there are bully spirits bullying the other spirits as well. So it wasn't just bullying the living, but any spirit that's present might have been bullied by that same entity.
That makes a lot
because
of sense.
there seemed to be a hierarchy. There was something in that upstairs bedroom that seemed to have court over the whole house.
Oh, yeah.
Well,
and I mean, that was the sensation that we were getting, was like, it all goes back there. Mm-hmm. And that thing does not have to come down, but when it does, everything else
has to move.
Yeah, clears out.
Well, and when we first moved in, upstairs was her office originally. And she was just like, it's so negative. I can't do it. It's so negative. Like, I feel so much energy. And right below that was the breaker box for the entire house, which was in the garage below it.
Right.
So, of course, I'm going through and I'm just like...
Well, that's the electromagnetic, right.
Exactly. So I'm like, let's just move you downstairs, because, I'm trying to brush it off. Like, nope, this isn't real. Like, it's just whatever.
I'm like, you're wrong. I feel it.
And that's such a wonderful thing to bring up, too, is the fact that a lot of people, when they're dealing in, like, ghost hunting, and they're starting, one of the first tools that they ever get is the EMF reader. It reads electromagnetic fields. And ideally, if it's a tool so that you can see if there's like a spill of electromagnetic coming out of your breaker box or wiring or anything like that. But what they describe is headaches and weakness and dizziness and sometimes hallucinations and all these symptoms that people complain about with the supernatural.
Exactly.
But if there's no source of the EMF and the EMF has that effect on you, that means that spirits must have the same effect on you just by the merit of their presence. Because if it can be read by the EMF meter, then the feelings that you're feeling they go hand
because
in hand.
their energy too.
Because their energy too. But that also brings about this wonderful, perplexing thing where it's like, well, would spirits want to hang out next to the fuse box? Would they like to be where that energy is so potent and so powerful? We've learned just by casual observation that houses that are under transformers are more likely to be haunted because there's this exuding EMF field that spirits can feed on and can present themselves with and utilize and become very pushy and
they don't have to go around and steal people's batteries. And
right, exactly. They could just focus on tormenting you.
Right.
Yeah, we had a group of young women who came onto the show to talk about their demonic encounter in their home here in Savannah. And the first thing they noted was that all of it started after a transformer
huge,
blew.
explode.
You know?
Yep.
And it was just like instant, just peril, and they almost had a possession sort of deal go on, so it makes sense.
That episode was very like,
oh, y'all watched it?
Yeah.
It's intense.
It's so intense, and it keeps harkening back to this notion of how spirits operate. That there's a brand of spirit that is desperate to be fully integrated in your life. They want to be able to feed on you and attach themselves to you. And we had talked about possession before, and that when people talk about possession, they're almost always talking about the final stage where a demon's inside of you or puppeting you or whatever. But the earlier stages is all about wearing you down, getting you weak, taking away your resolve.
Narcissist.
Right? Yeah. Yes. All demons are narcissists. That is a fair assessment, and it should be noted. I want a T-shirt that says on the front, "All demons are narcissists," and on the back, "All narcissists are demons."
There you go. $1 million
So they can see you coming and going.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, that is a really interesting point to make, because maybe the reason why I liked that spot was because it was above the breaker box, but also why it was almost targeting you at first, because you were one of the first people, not to say you stepped into its realm, but you kind of did in a way,
And you perceive them.
Exactly.
If it's something that spirits love more than anything else, is being perceived. The moment you acknowledge that you've seen them, or they can tell that you've seen them, it's on. That's one of the hazards of being a medium. Which, by the way, you're a medium. You don't.
Yeah,
he is.
You can stop with the. I'm not sure. It's called mediumship when a spirit can identify itself and tell you who he is. Yeah. You're a medium, and you might want to train up on it. But the truth of the matter is,
besides that, even the slightest amount of attention can satiate a spirit.
And because a lot of times when I talk about like routine hauntings or casual hauntings, hauntings that aren't threatening life and limb, if you just simply say hi there, or I acknowledge you're here, they don't feel the need to expend energy to get your attention, because you paid it. You paid attention. But if you focus on it and you're like, zang, and they're like, oh, buffet.
Kind of like focusing on the friend at Walmart instead of just walking to the other aisle.
Well, and, I drive Uber downtown too, and people will ask me, how do you know it's the most haunted city? And I was just like, well, you don't, but it will. How do you do this or how do you do that? And I was like, well, one, you just have to be open to it. And two, I was just like, you've got to realize, if you're walking down a busy city street and you hear, hey, are you going to stop and turn around? But if you say, Chris, they're going to stop and turn around. And when you're looking for them, you're calling their name. So they're going to pay you more attention.
Throwing a line right out to them.
So it's, if you're looking, you're going to find something.
Which it's fascinating, because I was just having a conversation earlier today about this. People who listen to ghosty podcasts or watch videos of investigations or things like that, how oftentimes they start to have more experiences themselves. It's like, you are actively putting a beacon out, you're opening your mind, your mind opens every time you have these encounters, and that makes you sensitive enough to what's going on around you. And it's wild because like people will be like, I didn't really believe, but I started listening to your podcast, and now I see things and I hear things, and am I going crazy? It's like, no, you've just opened the door in your brain a little more than it was.
Well, and I've heard a lot of people say that they appreciate y'all for being able to come here and share their experiences, because it's funny. Well before this, I called Amy. I was like, hey, we want to know about this place, and she was like, yeah, we'll take you out there. So we went to a cemetery, and so we both picked up on somebody standing off to the side, and so we're over here whispering. And I look up, and Enid's just across the cemetery, and she's looking at us like, and I'm like, you've got to realize we're used to being really quiet about this, because most of the time, if you tell
anything to anybody,
you tell somebody, oh no, I see somebody standing over there, they look at you like you're crazy. And I'm like, I'm sorry, I forgot about current company is okay with that.
Speaking of which, how do you know Enid? What is that relationship?
From her TikTok, like. We found her on TikTok, the journal and sticker business. Like, I called her and I was like, hey, we have a company. We wanted to do a live ghost hunt. Are you down? And she was like, yes. So she did a live ghost tour for us for our followers on Instagram. Sure. And so ever since then, if something happens and I'm like, hey, yo, look, I need to know about this.
No, it's a good choice. Yeah, we rely on Enid a lot because she is down to earth while still having a good grasp on this metaphysical, and because it's easy to unravel when if you get the wrong group of people together, the hysteria that you can create is insane. Yeah. So you need people who are willing to accept that this is real, but also keep their foot, firmly planted. Yeah. And it's like because it's easy. Behind this door is a cacophony of weirdness, and we were, we're opening a paranormal museum, and I hired a curator who has zero sensitivity, zero knowledge of any of it. And it's the best thing I could have done, because while I'm going, that thing's moving, he's like, I don't think so.
It's like, what? Yeah. What's wrong with you?
and you kind of need a balance. Like the more insane the adventure, the more anchored a person you need with you. So
most definitely.
So my advice to any ghost hunter out there is have one solid skeptic or a person who can keep their feet on the ground while you go, bouncing off the walls.
Yeah. Well, somebody yells that thing's moving, I'm getting the camera.
Oh, absolutely.
Well, so we put cameras on everything. We have a doll in the back there that's moved, and we're now like convinced that it has been moving, but the camera's been being shut off. The camera regularly shuts off, and it was like, I could swear that doll was looking this way, and now it's looking that way. Check the camera, because we put a camera on it, a motion detecting camera, and it's like, camera's offline. It's like, well, why is the camera offline? It's plugged into the wall. It doesn't have, it's
right. It's convenient.
It's good. It's just not online.
It's like, you can't track me.
Right.
Why you all up in my business?
Yeah. It's like, I will move when I feel like moving.
Exactly.
And not for your entertainment. But, well, awesome, y'all. Thank you so much for coming on the show today. We really appreciate y'all letting Chris and Enid journey into your haunted horror
it was
house.
fantastic. It was very potently haunted, to the point at which we were kind of like, it's a shame that this is a planned community, because they obviously steamrolled over whatever history there was.
Yes. Oh yeah.
If they did find something, if there was something there, they weren't going to report it. They weren't going to interrupt, that. They were just like, oh, looks like a great,
don't worry about it.
Keep building the house.
Yeah.
Don't
There's no
worry
telling
about
what
it.
it was. There's no telling.
But
Well, thank y'all for having us out.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Absolutely.
And thank you for
pleasure.
investigating the house.
Yeah, no, it was incredible.
Yeah, we always love to hear people's experiences, and hear about the different variety of spirits people encounter. You know, it's just fascinating, even just a catalog, you know.
Right.
But yeah, so hopefully y'all enjoyed today's episode, but we will be back next week with, I believe, another guest, and it's going to be a skeptic who's coming on this show. So that'll be really fun.
We were just talking about that.
Yes, exactly. I was thinking of Bill in my head when you were saying that.
It's important. It's important to ground yourself. Absolutely.
So, yes, like we said at the beginning, if you want to join us over on Patreon, that's the best way to support us. Also, the live stream's up there. You can find JT's Ouija boards at hauntedcitypodcast.com. And with that, though, my name is Madison Timmons.
I'm Chris Susi.
And stay spooky, y'all.